Hey, what's up? Welcome in again to the Sixth Floor podcast, Drafting the 80s. Love this format. We're drafting 80s stuff. And today, it's Breeze's topic. And by the way, Yap here, Johnson, upper left, Breeze, lower left, and Sags in the lower right. So we're drafting the 80s. And Breeze had the idea we're going to go to the sports category, Alex, for 200. Can you kind of share this with us, Breeze? What you're talking about?
Yeah, well, since the past couple of weeks we've been doing drafting and we've been talking kind of off camera about the kind of format we want to have going forward, and we're kind of honing in on the 80s. Like we talked about last week, that was kind of in our wheelhouse on music and movies and sports. So since we drafted movies, favorite 80s movies last week, I thought that with the NFL season starting off this week, this would be a good time to kind of go back into the sports realm and start with an easy selection and do 80s quarterbacks.
Good deal. 80s quarterbacks. Ton of great ones out there.
It really is. I mean, when you look at the list, some of the best quarterbacks that ever played a game. I mean, played in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, and the draft order this evening is, Sags, you randomized it. Where are we?
I did, and it will go Breeze, Yap, me, Johnson.
All right.
And then Johnson's in the catbird seat.
Yep.
All right.
So to speak.
Okay. My internet connection is unstable according to my computer, so bear with us here. All right, Breeze, you are on the clock.
And I was kind of hoping I wasn't going to be the first pick. Because we were joking, when we were talking about this at the beginning of the week, we kind of joked about, it was kind of obvious what the first pick was going to be. I was trying to downplay that because I wanted to focus on not who was the best quarterback in the 80s according to us, but who we liked the best from the 80s quarterback. So I think that's a slight little distinction that we can make that might kind of spice up our draft picks hopefully a little bit. But having said all that, when I was looking through all the quarterbacks from the 80s, there was only really, for me personally, about a half a dozen or so that really stood out of quarterbacks that I remember that I kind of felt strongly about at that age. And so obviously the top one for that is kind of everybody's go-to. I kind of hate to pick this as number one, but I don't think you can pass up Joe Montana as the number one pick. I think we have not only, you could, but not only is he considered maybe one of the best quarterbacks to ever play statistically with the Super Bowls and everything else, he was just a really likable guy. And even though I wasn't a 49ers fan as a kid, most people liked Joe Cool. So to me, there's only one other quarterback from the 80s that even comes close to Joe Montana in terms of likability and success and NFL records, et cetera, when you add up the whole package. And I suspect that this other person will be selected very soon. But for my pick, I got to go with Joe Montana.
Can't go wrong with Joe.
Yeah, it's no argument for me with him not only being the best quarterback of the 80s, but maybe the best of all time.
He's a system quarterback.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, I would go with him as the best of all time. Hey, it's him or Tom Brady, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. So, all right, so that brings it to me, and I'm presuming, Breeze, that you said there's only one quarterback that comes close to Joe Montana in the draft.
For me, yeah.
For you, and you said, well, maybe for us too, one quarterback that comes close, and I'm pretty sure that I've nailed it with this second pick. The second pick in the draft is going to be none other than James Arthur Zorn. Jim Zorn, the very first quarterback that the Seattle Seahawks had, the lefty, number 10, favorite target was Steve Largent. He was a scrambling quarterback. Was he successful? Sure, because they were an expansion team, and expansion teams don't normally do that well. But as he built that relationship with Largent over the years, and you saw him just sit back, and I'm saying this because this is my favorite team. I'm sure there were better quarterbacks than Jim Zorn in the 80s, but and he wasn't really a quarterback through the whole decade of the 80s. I mean, he was kind of cut off there early 80s when Dave Craig took over, and I'm sure that one of you guys will probably take Dave Craig, so I probably shouldn't have said that. But in that era, that's how I grew up watching football, because when I was a kid, I thought, man, the Seahawks have cool uniforms. I like that team. And that was when I was 9 years old or 8 years old. And I thought, man, this left-handed quarterback, he's something else. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he'll find the open guy, and he'll just pick you apart. He'll run for first downs, and he'll scramble a lot in the backfield. But it's just a guy that I really have admired over the years, watching him even as a coach now. He coached the XFL team in Seattle, and they were doing pretty well. But as a kid, I had the Jim Zorn Sears jersey. You all remember those? Order them from the catalogs and everything. I had the Jim Zorn jersey. And I was just a huge, huge fan of Jim Zorn. So that's going to be my pick in the first round. Sorry, he's off the board, guys.
So I don't guess I'm surprised that he fell, because again, there's a lot of good quarterbacks, but I'm glad it was favorite, because best, that's obviously debatable. I guess that's why we're on the show. But mine kind of has lots of connections. So I'm an Oregon fan. Have been since I'm a newer fan, since Chip Kelly came on. I just liked how they played football. Obviously, uniforms kind of drew me in. So became an Oregon fan. Have been for a little while. But if you go all the way back to the 80s, 70s, and then he was a pro in the 80s, I'm going to take the quarterback who ran Air Coryell and Mr. Dan Fouts.
Good pick.
They were like that team that – one of the reasons he's my number one pick is kind of my favorite from the 80s is I will never forget that AFC Championship game. It was just muddy and rainy, and it was at night, and it was I hate to be like the old guy, but man, that was real football. That was legit. Kellen Winslow almost died in that game.
He did.
Well, there you go. What a way to go out. I remember him just being hurt, but he would go back out for the play and he'd make a great catch. And it was just an amazing game. And again, Fouts had all kinds of records, obviously passing records. So and they had cool uniforms. I remember as a kid, I kind of like redesigned the uniforms. And let's just say there may have been too many lightning bolts on their redesigned uniforms that I did, because I thought that was cool, but it would have looked terrible. But the Chargers kind of had cool uniforms. They were fun to watch. So I'm gonna take Dan Fouts as my number one.
Solid.
You know what I like about Dan Fouts is the fact that you see all these quarterbacks today in the shotgun, and they'll just take the snap and take a step back. He was a guy that would line up under center and backpedal his way back. He wouldn't do the sidestep and the 5-step drop. He would just backpedal, looking straight at the defense, and then just pick you apart. That's what I love about Dan Fouts.
Great.
All right, I guess I'm up for back-to-back picks.
That's
Yes,
correct.
sir.
All right, 1982 was the year where I really started following sports. And by what I mean is that's when I not only watched every game, but started paying attention to box scores in the daily newspaper, reading preview stories. so 82 was really when I first started following stuff a lot more closely. And to this day, I'm still a Washington football team fan. I guess we can say Redskins on here, I guess.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what they were called, the Redskins, for
In the 80s, yeah.
up until about 3 weeks ago. So 1982 being the first year that I really followed, that team, they went on and won the 1983 Super Bowl. When you look at that Super Bowl victory against the Miami Dolphins, people are always going to point out to that fourth down touchdown run by John Riggins, one of the greatest plays in Super Bowl history. There's another important play in that game where quarterback threw a pass and it was tipped. And at the time, the Redskins were trailing. And it looked like it could have been an interception return for a touchdown for the Dolphins, make it a 2-score deficit for the Redskins. The quarterback kind of chased down the play, knocked the ball loose, prevent them from scoring. That was a very important play in that game. And I want a quarterback who can make a play like that. Joe Theismann's stats were not great that year because they were a predominantly run-heavy team, which makes sense when you got a guy like John Riggins. But that kind of set the blueprint for what I want out of my starting quarterback. And like I said, there's plenty of other quarterbacks that are better statistically in that decade than Joe Theismann. But what he did that first year I got into football, Joe Theismann's always going to be my favorite quarterback. So that's why I'm taking him number 1.
That's a good pick, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets points for changing his name, too.
Yeah.
Well, the pronunciation of it.
Yeah.
He also gets bonus points for snapping his leg in two.
Yeah.
Well, with a special shout out to Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah. But, you think about that play, which is as iconic as anything that has happened in the NFL, that really changed the way the league as a whole kind of viewed the position of left tackles and how important that position was and how much money players who play that position make. So
Yeah.
didn't help Joe Theismann's leg in it.
No.
All right, moving on to my second pick, sticking with the same team, and I'm going to a Super Bowl victory at the end of the decade, Doug Williams. Not only the first black quarterback to win Super Bowl, maybe one of the best Super Bowl pregame quotes ever when a reporter asked him how long he's been a black quarterback. He said, "Well, I've been a quarterback since high school. I've been black all my life." That's just great. I didn't know this until I was just looking up a little bit of research on him. The day before that Super Bowl, he had a 6-hour root canal surgery. Not a week before, not a month before. The day before, he went out and led the Redskins to a 42-10 Super Bowl victory against the Broncos. In a game that started off not all that great for the Redskins. The first quarter was rough. Then Doug Williams arguably had the single best quarter a quarterback has ever had in the Super Bowl with 4 touchdown passes. Finished with 340 yards in that game. It just what he meant that season, because I think they kind of brought him in late. They were looking at other guys to kind of take over that position. Jay Schrader, specifically. I think Mark Rippon was involved with that team. He would lead them to their Super Bowl in the 90s. But Doug Williams, for everything also, let's not forget, I also had a couple pretty decent years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers about the same time they came into the league along with the Seahawks. So there it is, back-to-back picks. My Redskins 80s quarterbacks, Joe Theismann and Doug Williams.
Solid.
Those are strong. Yeah. Those are good. And Doug Williams, man, that Super Bowl, I was a Redskins fan back in the day. And after that first quarter, I was like, man, this is going to be a long flipping game. And then they went ballistic.
Yeah.
They just opened the can. It was crazy. So my second round pick, again, you kind of adapt to who you are. At the time, I wouldn't say I loved him, but over time, I've grown to really, really like him, and I like that he was his own person. He wasn't great for a long time. I dare say he wasn't great when he was supposed to be. But my second pick is going to be the punky QB known as McMahon from the 1985 Chicago Bears. Super Bowl shuffle. I lived up in the Chicago area in Indiana, just outside a little bit. So you couldn't get away from them. They were the 85 Bears. Again, people can argue teams, but man, that team was unreal. Defense, I know the Ravens had a great defense not too long ago, but I might put the 85 Bears up against them. The 85 Bears were just absolutely ridiculous. You could not score on that team.
Yeah.
Well, one team could. They went 15-1. But the worst part of that season, obviously, was Walter Payton did not get to score a touchdown, but William Perry did in the Super Bowl, which was absolutely criminal. But yeah, McMahon was just crazy. He had to wear sunglasses all the time because as a kid he got a fork stuck in his eye, and it hurt his vision or something. So he always had to wear sunglasses, and so I mean he had them on all the time. Never wore shoes except to play, of course, but still doesn't today. So he's definitely his own person. And again, I don't think he's a great quarterback by any stretch, but he was a lot of fun, and they just ran the table almost in '85, and he was fun to watch and fun to listen to. So I'll take Jim McMahon.
Yeah,
I think that's
great as. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think it was. We might get ready to say a similar thing. I think the thing about him is that he's one of those examples where we talk about it's the perfect marriage between the quarterback and his personality, and the personality and the style of the team that he was with. He may not have had the same type of success with another team, and it may not have, if another quarterback had been on that Bears team, it might have messed with the whole chemistry of the team. I mean, who knows what would have happened. That Bears team was so good anyway, but it's just weird that he was a perfect fit for that team.
Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, he got fined for wearing the headband that said Ruse on it for kangaroos. That was a shoe company for you kids back in the day. Had a little pouch in the shoe, which nobody used, but whatever. And he got fined for that. So he started wearing headbands with just his own personal messages on there. Like he put, the commissioner's name, Roselle, on there, and just a ton of stuff. So he was very anti-establishment at the time. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I was just going to say, although not my favorite quarterback, and I agree, not the best quarterback of the decade. When you hear 1980s and then quarterback, I think Jim McMahon is the person I visualize more so than any other quarterback.
I can see that.
So,
right, yeah, you're up.
I think the quarterback that I visualize the most when I think of 1980s, McMahon is up there, but the one that I'm going to pick right now is a guy that exemplifies 1980s, although he never won a Super Bowl, and that is Dan Marino. The guy threw for 63,000 yards and 420 touchdowns, and just had a cannon
in
of
one
arm.
season.
Yeah, it was in one season. That might be a record or something. But, graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, and he goes to the Dolphins. And look what he did with the Dolphins. First year, rookie in 83, 7-2. But then he goes 14-2, 12-4, couple of years, 8-8 and 7-5, 6-10, but 12-4, 11-5, 10-6, 10-6. The guy was a constant winner, completed a ton of passes, threw for a lot of touchdowns, cannon of an arm. Again, the only thing against him, no Super Bowl. Nothing really to show for it. And, he's a great Hall of Fame quarterback, but doesn't have that ring. But still, you can't take away the success that he had on the field with that Miami Dolphins football team. And what he did there under center. Just a tremendous quarterback. And I think when I think 80s quarterbacks, he's the one I think of, and Brian Sipe. But I don't think anybody's going to take him. But I think Dan Marino.
And Marino was, again, he was a lot like, I guess, Fouts, because you just remember they played in the Orange Bowl. And, again, man, nothing beats football in grass in, like, November. And, again, he would air it out like Fouts would, and he had the great receivers. And, I mean, he just fit the role. He had, Miami Vice obviously was big back then. And, he was a good-looking guy, had the tan and, again, the cool uniforms. And, I agree. I think 80s and Miami Dan Marino might top the list there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had those two great receivers. Everybody knew who those receivers were because he's throwing to those Duper and Clayton, and man, it was a lot of fun to watch. I just think about, you mentioned Fouts and Marino. Just imagine if they were playing in today's league with the hand check rules and the pass interference call and the way the offenses are geared. I mean, they were scoring 30-some points in the 80s when that was high average. Would they be in the 40s and 50s all the time now? I mean, geez.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, Breeze, your pick, sir.
All right. Well, I'm glad Philly y'all drafted Marino because I was going to take him if he didn't. So with my pick, the guy I'm going to go with is a guy that had incredible athletic talent, and he had some just jaw-dropping plays in many, many, many games. And he was doing things that quarterbacks had yet to do up until that point. And I think he was one of the few that kind of planted the seed in people's minds where the evolution of the quarterback has taken to where we are now with quarterbacks who can run and throw and do different things. So this was a quarterback that I wasn't a huge fan of at the time, but now that kind of time has passed, I've grown to appreciate him even more and kind of wished that I would have paid more attention to him when he was playing. So I'm going with Randall Cunningham.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Burt Jones.
Steve Bartkowski.
Yeah, Randall.
I mean, Breeze, you're 100% correct, though. I mean, he's the guy that kind of opened that door for, the Michael Vicks, the Cam Newtons, a lot of the Deshaun Watsons, the type of, players that are so prominent, playing that position nowadays.
He was like late 80s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most of his, mid 80s when he started, but he got, 90, 91. He had some good years. He was, in fact, I was looking up his numbers, debating between him and Dan Marino on who to take. So can't go wrong with that pick. And now you got to pick another one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He was drafted in 85, by the way. So, yeah, he was mid to late.
Yeah.
I'm kind of waffling on this one. I guess I'm going to go with my team's quarterback, Jim Plunkett is the pick. He's another one like we've talked about with some of the other picks that we had in the first round. He didn't have the fantastic numbers, and he wasn't maybe the most athletic person in the world. But I kind of think of Plunkett a little bit like maybe Theismann category in the sense that he wasn't incredibly mobile, but he was smart. He made right plays. He was gritty. He, could run the team. Just had a lot of intangibles. Was a really smart guy. Came from Stanford. You want to call him a system quarterback? Maybe he was a system quarterback. But Jim Plunkett was pretty popular quarterback during the 80s and key component of those Raiders championship team.
It helped them win 2 Super Bowls and what 80 or 81 and then 84.
Yeah.
Marcus Allen helped a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's okay.
For a USC guy.
Yeah.
My third pick is going to be another guy that did not win a Super Bowl. But
And
again,
you like winners.
That's right, Sags. But when you think, again, when I think 80s quarterbacks, a lot of these guys come to mind. This guy in particular, too. Maybe not so much what he did. He did more in the 90s, I think. But he started off in the USFL. All right, played for the Houston Gamblers a couple of years. Then he went to the Buffalo Bills. I'm talking about Jim Kelly. And Jim Kelly, say what you want. I mean, the guy went to 4 Super Bowls. And how many quarterbacks on this list have gone to 4 Super Bowls? And 4 straight, right? I mean, it was 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's unheard of. The guy led the team to 4 Super Bowls. Didn't win a single one of them. Had 7 interceptions in his 4 Super Bowls. But to get him to that point, you know, I just think of Jim Kelly and just the success he had. Like I said, a lot more of his success was there in the 90s, the early 90s. But still, I mean, he gets his start in the 80s, and he was dominant in the USFL. So carried that over to the NFL and did well with Buffalo.
Yeah, that's
pretty much it. Yep.
it's Jim Kelly's awesome, man. Plus, I mean, you look at what I know that has nothing to do with his play in the 80s, but what he's had to overcome in his personal life, since then, so hats off to that man.
All right, so I was going to cheat a little, and nobody had picked him, but I was going to pick Troy Aikman, but he was drafted in '89. I didn't think that would be really fair. So I'm going to go with somebody else. Again, I think we were all drawn to uniforms. We need a uniform podcast.
10 minutes.
At some point. Huh?
10 minutes.
Okay. So, again, cool uniforms. Guy could air it out. Probably did not get the credit when he first started. Started in the CFL. But, again, could throw it all over the place. Didn't win a ton, I guess, But, again, fun to watch. And I'm going to go with Warren Moon as my last pick. So I got 3 guys that'll throw it around the yard a little bit.
Yeah. No, I like that pick a lot.
So,
yep.
He was a guy I was eyeballing too. Just solid. Houston Oilers, love it.
Yeah.
And then he went to the Seahawks, love it.
That's who I was waffling. That's who I was waffling with Plunkett. Was between Moon and Plunkett.
Well, you chose wrong. So.
All right.
No, I just gave you the courtesy of leaving him for you.
I appreciate that.
As we've stated previously, there's a lot of great quarterbacks. If you're talking best quarterbacks this decade, I mean, I think it pretty much starts with Montana, Marino, and a guy who, spoiler alert, is going to end up not going drafted, John Elway sitting out there. Fouts probably deserves to be in that conversation. But like you said, I kind of really stuck to just guys that I just enjoyed watching, whether they played for my team or not. So with the final pick in this draft, much like I know Yap's a legit longtime Seahawks fan, and I always enjoyed watching Zorn to Largent connection. So I started thinking about other quarterback to receiver connections that I really enjoyed watching as a kid. And there's no other reason for this pick other than I loved watching Roy Green catch passes from Neil Lomax. So I'm going to go with the St. Louis Cardinals at the time. The quarterback from 1981 to 1989, Neil Lomax. How's
Neil
that?
Lomax.
I'll take Neil Lomax and leave John Elway sitting there.
That's bold, man. That is
Yeah.
really bold.
Hey,
Oh wow.
That is interesting that Johnson said we're leaving Elway out there. So that kind of begs the question: do we think of him more as a '90s quarterback, or is it something else?
I think
honestly, I think of him. He plays for the Denver Broncos, and the only team I dislike more than the Broncos is the Cowboys. I mean, I wouldn't root for the Cowboys if they were playing the Taliban. So Elway's not far behind.
Strong.
But I recognize that he was a great quarterback. But it is a fair point because that was the knock on him, at the tail end of the 80s was like he couldn't win the big game, but then he finally got over that hump in the 90s.
Terrell
Much
Davis
like
got
what
over
you
the
said
hump.
with Marcus Allen, a lot of help from a man named Terrell Davis.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was my issue with not issue, but why I didn't pick Elway was like, again, I picked guys I thought were fun to watch. I don't think he was terribly fun to watch. And, like you said, he didn't really win. Not that, all of our guys that we picked did win a lot, Phil Yaw especially. And he didn't really win till he got TD. So, I don't know. He was to me.
All right, we got about 5:45 left. So if you want to go through one more round, like a quick round,
I take Aikman.
What?
Oh,
I take Aikman.
oh.
So just
I'm
quick
still going to
pick.
leave Elway sitting there. I'll take Brian Sight before I'll take John Elway.
Well, you're on the clock.
All right, Brian Sight. Just because I every pack of football cards I opened between 1981 and 1984 had a Brian Sight card.
Okay.
I will take, if we go back through, again, fun to watch, hardcore football, just, again, in the dirt. I just remember watching a lot of, especially being from the north, I remember watching a lot of Cleveland Browns games and, Bernie Kosar. Again, not great, not whatever, but, again, there was nothing – few places were better than Cleveland and the brown uniforms and, again, the grass and the dirt and the mud and the to me, that's just always fun to watch. And I watched a ton, with him and Byers running and he fumbled a lot too, but so I'll take Kosar.
All right.
Or just Viner. Sorry, not Byers. Viner.
I will take I'm going back to my team, Dave Craig, because he was the one that really got the Seahawks winning. Jim Zorn laid the foundation, but Craig was the one that got him through the playoffs, 12-win seasons. And he was just a solid guy. He dropped that sidearm thing down and just a fun guy to watch. And I'm picking him because that would be the third Seahawk picked in this draft, which would be the most of any team, if I'm not mistaken, surpassing the Redskins too. So, Dave Craig.
Just to go back on Bernie Kosar for a second, just had a question. Did Cleveland, that famous Cleveland-Denver game and the AFC Championship game, was that the only time that Cleveland made it to the conference championship game during Kosar's tenure? Or did they, was that 2 years in a row that Denver and Cleveland played each other, or was that just that one year?
I was thinking there were
remember.
2 occasions that they played.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It was 2 occasions.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was in the conference final both times or if it was one was a conference final and one was a divisional game or something. Somebody get on that. Some of our staff.
Crack staff.
But yeah, it feels like Kozar at least should have kind of maybe snuck into a Super Bowl there in one of those years.
Well, and fumbled. You probably would have.
Yeah. All right. So with the last pick in the draft, while we're looking up this Kozar information, I'm going to go with an NFC East. Sticking since we had 2 Redskin quarterbacks, I'm going to get 2 Eagles quarterbacks and get Ron Jaws Jaworski.
I love Frank Caliendo's impersonation of Ron Jaworski. I don't know why. That just makes me laugh. 1986 conference championship game. The Browns played the Broncos. 1987 conference championship. They also played the Broncos. And in 1989, they played the Broncos in the conference championship.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jeez.
It's hard to believe the Browns were, decent then.
It's that foundation of
They were
Brian
really
Sykes
good.
that.
They were really good, though.
Yeah, they were fun, yeah.
Legit good.
Yeah. The dog
Ozzie
pound, man.
Newsome.
Yeah.
They were legit. I mean, they suck now, but
They were
120
even
to
decent
go.
on Tecmo Bowl. Yeah.
Tecmo Bowl. Oh, well, we got about a minute to go.
Well, we'll recap our top 5. With the number 1 pick, it was Joe Montana. Number 2 was Jim Zorn. Number 3 was Dan Fouts. Number 4 was Joe Theismann. Number 5 was Doug Williams.
I like
Pretty
it.
solid.
2 Redskins in the top 5.
Yeah, pretty solid. Especially that number 2.
Yeah. The best
Number 2,
NFL
all right.
player whose last name starts with a Z. I mean,
Good point. Next week, we're back with another Drafting the 80s, and I guess Johnson's up, right?
I think so. I think I've got an idea, too.
All right.
hit us.
No, because we're getting ready to run out of time here.
That's the way to get them to come back.
What they
Both
call
of them.
teas in the business.
Yeah. It'll be a good one. I can promise that.
Can't wait.
No.
Okay.